Hey, I'm Natalie. I am an ISFJ, um, Enneagram 6, and I'm 28 years old.
So yeah, we do have a special guest today. Natalie's one of actually the first censor that I will be guesting in the series that I'm doing about basically kind of debunking some of the stereotypes that surround each type. And I really am excited to do this with you because I know you're familiar with the functions and have been also studying this for quite some time. So that's also one thing that's, I suppose, important to provide insights to those who want to learn more about ISFJs and or even sensors in general. So, hi guys, I'm MJ of MBTI Time. You can follow me on my socials at MBTI Time, and if you want to learn more about personality types, you can check out my social media. So, just to give a bit of a background on how Nat and I met, I started off MBTI on Twitter actually back in 2018. And she's actually one of the first few people whom I've met there and talked prior into kind of making memes on Instagram. And so I'm really excited to hear her stories and insights on what it means to be an ISFJ and to kind of tackle some of the burning questions many people might have about their type. So my first question would be, why do you think is there an underrepresentation of sensors in general in the MBTI community, especially online?
So I've thought a lot about this before, and I think there are probably like two main reasons. Um, the first, I think, is that maybe I know a lot of people say that sensors are less likely to be into MBTI because it's more of a theoretical um, interest. It deals with a lot of conceptual things, and I guess stereotypically sensors are less interested in those things. But I also think that it's because there are a lot of really stereotypical descriptions online, really shallow descriptions, and I think a lot of sensors probably don't see themselves in those descriptions much. I know when I was first getting into MBTI, I was reading up on all the types, and I thought the intuitive types sounded so cool, and I wanted to be like them. But then I read the sensing descriptions, and they just weren't as exciting to me. And so I can see how, like, if you do type as a sensor, you might think, oh, this is, boring, or there's just not a lot of material out there that appeals to me. So I think it's kind of twofold. Like, I think maybe intuitives are a little more likely to be interested in it naturally, but speaking as a sensor who is really interested in MBTI, I think a lot of it is probably just there aren't a whole lot of good sensing descriptions out there unless you read like Jung's original psychological types, but it's a pretty dense book and a little hard to get through. So, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I do agree with you. Even as an intuitive, when I read Young's book on psychological types, I think generally PI related things, when they get into the details is and when they get really theoretical about something that maybe not a lot of people has even talked about before, because I think before Young there weren't a lot of theories about the unconscious or like personalities. So
Mm-hmm.
even as an intuitive myself, it was also hard for me to understand it. So um, I do share that sentiment as well with you. Which now leads me to my next question. So, how did you then get into personality typing, and how do you think has this framework or the frameworks that exist helped you in different aspects of your life as an I?
Yeah. So, I got into personality typing in college. It was my first year of college. I took a class where everybody took the official MBTI test, and I tested as ISTJ on that one. And I remember reading some ISTJ descriptions and thinking, this is mostly on point for me, but there's like some things that seem like they're missing. And So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and I read descriptions of all the types, and I don't know if I'd gotten into cognitive functions at that point yet. So, and then I started learning about the cognitive functions, and I feel like it's really helped me just understand other people's perspectives and kind of where they're coming from. On a more personal note, I've always struggled with social anxiety. And so it really gave me kind of a framework for understanding people and realizing that people are different. And it kind of took a little bit of the fear out of social interactions and gave me something to look forward to and be interested in and try to like kind of figure out what somebody's type was and what they were like. And I just found it really fun and interesting, and I feel like it helped me overcome some of that like social anxiety and just anxiety about people in general, and realizing that everybody's different and that I'm different too, and that's good.
Has anybody said or assumed that, hey, you don't look like an ISFJ, you might be an intuitive, or you might be a perceiver, or anything like that?
um it's really funny. I almost wish people would do this because I think it would be entertaining. But I feel like, at least in the type community, when I've, met people face to face like this, especially, they always tell me like, you are like the stereotypical version of an ISFJ. And I don't really think I am, but I guess like the vibes I give off are kind of like, I don't know, ISFJ-ish. But I do know another ISFJ in the community who has said that a lot of people type her as INFP. And I do think those types can kind of come off a little bit similarly at times, maybe because of the shared like SI and NE, and just the fact that we're introverts and feelers. Like, there's a lot of different things I feel like that an ISFJ could be mistyped as potentially, but I personally don't get a lot of people asking me that.
Hmm. What about one of the closest types to you, apart from ISTJ? What about INFJs? A lot of people have also said that a lot of quote unquote INFJs are actually mistyped ISFJs. What can you say about that, and what would even make them think that?
Mm. Um, well, I know that before I really dug deep into typology, I kind of thought maybe, just from reading like the 16 personalities descriptions and stuff like that, I had kind of thought, oh, I think it'd be cool to be an INFJ, like, because they sounded the most similar to me, I think, out of all the types, just on a surface level. Um, and I think, especially if you're an ISFJ like me, who's interested in like writing and art and stereotypical kind of intuitive interests, you can probably easily mistype if you're not going super deep into like the cognitive functions. Um, but I think that some similarities with like INFJs, we share FE. And so I think the way we interact socially can appear somewhat similar. My best friend is an INFJ, and I can see like similarities in how we come off to people. Um, and then I have another friend who's an ISTJ, and I don't know if we come off super similar, but I think the way the inside of our brains work is kind of similar.
So you mentioned earlier that you are, according to a lot of people, maybe that you've encountered, that you are the stereotypical ISFJ. And so my third question would be, what stereotypical traits don't you personally identify with as an ISFJ?
The one I can think of off the top of my head is that like I know ISFJs and ISJs in general are supposed to be really like punctual and on time everywhere they go, and I am not. I struggle a lot with being late places and just not having a great sense of like how much time things are going to take me. I'm kind of spacey. I guess like there are some things about me that are like more stereotypically intuitive, I guess. Like, you hear about intuitives not being aware of their surroundings. Like, that's me to a T. Like, I'm really not um all that like aware at any given time of um I don't know how to say it, like my physical surroundings or just things that are going on. I feel like I kind of have like a laser focus for whatever I'm doing or working on. And so other things can kind of just the background, I guess. Oh, I guess I'm not really that like good at stereotypical sensor things um
Building.
like fixing machines or like doing things with my hands. Like I'm much more like up here with my interests. I mean, I'm into typology. I like writing and, reading and thinking about things and analyzing things. So I guess that's a little less stereotypical. And actually, I'm going to take that back about nobody mistyping me, because I did have um, a girl once who thought I was an INTP, like when she first met me. So I was like, that's kind of cool.
So what made you kind of like accept, but really are be convinced that you are as an ISFJ, despite all of the other stuff that you don't necessarily resonate with the stereotypes on it. Because I don't really know a lot, to be honest. I think that's the reason why I asked you the first question. There aren't a lot of content or data about real life ISFJs. And personally, as far as memes go, the ones that I mostly am familiar with in terms of stereotyping would be wanting a family, very family oriented, likes to cook and bake. Um, what like a very it's horrible. I think stereotypes are really bad. That's why I'm doing this series. But I do know from the ISFJs I've observed that they're really good with financial management.
Mm.
They're good at, it's really badly put. This is just my take. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're good at Excel. This is the example thing that I've seen myself. So I don't really know much apart from that. They're loyal. They're into, I don't know, they stick with a certain set of friends until the end of time, type of thing. So yeah, what do you accept? And like, yeah, I am indeed an ISFJ despite all of these other things that I don't relate with.
That's a good question. Um, I think at least back when I was reading the descriptions, I think just the general feeling of like, this is a very warm person. And I really related to that. Despite not really wanting to, like, there's a lot of stereotypical careers for ISFJs that they have like listed in a lot of these descriptions. So, like, nurse or teacher. And I've just never really wanted to do any of those things. But I did relate to I think one of the things was also like having a lot of like kind of random hobbies. Like they listed a lot of different things when I was reading about ISFJs for the first time, that I was like, oh yeah, I have a lot of these interests, or I don't know. I guess it was just like a general vibe. And then also, I think learning about the cognitive functions. So I realized that I definitely used extroverted feeling rather than extroverted thinking. I kind of feel like with like ISTJs organize their world or think about things in an external sense is like very different from how I do. And I'm pretty like, I guess I'm more attuned to like people's emotional expressions and moods and um, just all of the different things that come with, well, being a feeler in general. But there were a lot of kind of extroverted feeling things that I relate to. And then just the way that I could see, um, like when I looked at my friends in college, when I first got into this stuff, I had an ESFJ and an INFJ friend and an ISTJ friend. And I related much more to the way that the ESFJ and the INFJ um, would interact with other people and talk. And there's just this like warmth that comes out. And I think that was something for me that made me realize I was an ISFJ.
Okay, thank you. And now leading up to the next question. what do you think are the common misconceptions about ISFJs as a whole, or something that you'd want more people to know and understand? I think this is important. A big question, I guess, because there are a lot of materials on intuitives. I could ask any other person if they'd have an answer, and they could just research about this on their own. But coming from an ISFJ or a sensor herself, um, what is something that others really don't maybe understand as much, or would you should know more about your tech?
Trying to think of something that is not talked about at all in MBTI descriptions, but the thing that I can come up with is like, at least for me, um, I I'm a highly analytical person. It doesn't mean that I'm always the most logical, but I think about things a lot, and I think about certain topics very deeply, and I don't come to conclusions, I guess, quickly or lightly. And so I think a lot of people don't see that side of me because I don't like sharing my more, I guess, critical thoughts, like that might bother some people or offend people. Like I always worry about that. Um, and I think around people that I feel really comfortable with, I share those things. I share that side of myself, and also just the like wacky humor, like things that I come up with that are just ridiculous, and I love it. But that's also a side that people don't see to me a lot, I guess. Like in a work setting, I feel like I come off fairly boring in a work setting, to be honest, because um I'm not showing those other sides of myself. But I guess that's something I'd want people to understand, is that ISFJs, we probably think about things a lot more than we let on. And what you see is kind of the surface, or the side that we want you to see, that that's socially acceptable or whatever, but there's a lot underneath that.
I do agree with you, and I think I have a few ISFJ friends that I grew up with. One of my closest friends I met in university and in work that I ended up becoming real friends with even after I left that company. And someone I met in church when I was younger, so we kind of grew up together. And you're right in saying that. I think this encompasses all sensors even, because there is this notion that by virtue of being a sensor, that you're not as deep, and the sense that intuitives would assert or would like think or expect people to um, look like. Um, but even having dealt and met and conversed with ISFJ friends that I've known for years, you're right in saying that usually the different sides to them only unfold over time. And I think the analytical, because like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you fall into the spectrum also, but I've met a lot of ISFJs who end up becoming very entrepreneurial. And I think it takes a lot to run a business. Really, when I think about it, like these people are behind the scenes, but they're running people. They are taking care of the crew. Um, Two of them own restaurants, so that's something that I've also that I admire them for, because that takes a lot of brain work and people work, having to take care of like the back end, the dishes, and the people.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the analytical aspect is not, it may not be dealing with complex theories, but it also deals with making critical decisions that will impact the present and the future of whatever endeavor that they go into. So I think it's unfair um, to have that kind of perception towards a certain type, and that's why I'm doing this, because like I wish for more people to be heard. And I think that's why I'm like trying to figure out why aren't there any why is it that compared to the percentage of intuitives online, why is it that there aren't many sensors in general? Because like obviously the one who's in charge of the narrative is the one who is in there,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like
Yeah.
we're not really hearing from actual sensors, you're hearing from people who know sensors. And like we only know so much, honestly. And that's why I wanna be able to hear more from the real types. And so thank you for sharing your thoughts about that. Now leading up to um my next question. What do you think is a picture of an unhealthy, immature, or young ISFJ versus a more evolved, developed ISFJ?
Internally, like I'm still pretty young. But I think the difference that I've noticed, at least with the few older ISFJs that I know, and then like younger ones, and myself as a younger person, I feel like um, just being open to thinking about things in different ways and different possible solutions to problems. I feel like that stuff comes a lot easier to older ISFJs who have like developed that NE um, and that ability to see more possibilities, and just the amount of like, I guess just in general, like skills that you get as you age and live in the world and gain experiences. Like I kind of feel like the ISFJs who develop their NE the most, I don't know how to put it, to the best of their ability, like have had a lot of experiences to kind of feed that. And I think that's something I struggle with, is like getting out and having those new experiences. And I know even as if I think about myself 10 years ago, like I have a lot more life experience. And I think that just helps with like um, certain anxieties, like related to any, like, oh, what if this happens or this happens? And it's like the more experience you gain, the better equipped you are to deal with things. And I guess that's also true for everyone. But I think one of the big things for ISFJs is just like being open to trying new things and kind of getting out of our comfort zone in that way. Um, and then just, I don't know, I guess as like a shy person, like being able to talk to people a lot easier. Um, a lot of, I'm thinking of one ISFJ in particular I know who is quite a bit older than I am, but she's just really good at making conversation with people, and that's something that I still struggle with a lot, and struggled even more with when I was younger. Um, and then just the amount of like life experience she's had, I feel like has contributed to her development. Um, I don't know. I guess like some ISFJs, like stereotypically, ISFJs are kind of known for, in their more unhealthy states, being like kind of rigid and closed minded. I haven't seen that as much. I think it can happen. And I think there are certain things that I'm probably pretty rigid about, but at the same time, with like extroverted feeling, I feel like at least when it comes to other people or hearing what they have to say or being open to other perspectives, like ISFJs are actually pretty good at this. So I think a lot of the stereotypes of ISFJs are that we're like, it's like it kind of gives you a picture of a person who is just really, really set in their views and doesn't want to change at all. But I actually think ISFJs, at least for myself, I'm pretty good at like considering other viewpoints. It's more, I think like confidence is a big thing too. I think younger ISFJs, and even for myself, like it's hard for us to be confident in our abilities.
Hmm, that's true. I remember having that conversation with one of my ISFJs from university. She's already done so much, but I don't know if like Enneagram sixes is more common for ISFJs, but actually I'm a six. So I do relate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I also struggle with anxiety. And so I get you in a deep personal level. Um but when I'm talking with her, I think she's also a six, just by how I'm recalling my conversations with her. You've already done so much more than I have when we were younger, like fresh out of university. And even when I talk to her, it's always like, yeah, but it's like, it's always that kind of phrase that comes out of her. It's like, it's not enough, or she doesn't think that she's doing enough or good enough. So I'm like,
Hmm.
between the two of us, like, she's actually more hardworking and more brave in doing what she likes, but she still, up until that point, doesn't believe in what she's doing,
Mm.
right? So I'm like, I think that's something that I also notice about ISFJs, maybe particularly with those who have sixes in their Enneagram or tri-type or wing. But you did mention also about being rigid and like the whole set on their ways at certain times. I haven't really encountered that with her, so I think maybe when it comes to other people, you're open. But when it comes to yourself, maybe that's when you're like, oh, I'm only gonna do this. I'm only gonna. Maybe it's that, right? Your openness is maybe,
Yeah.
as maybe might be attributed to FE. Like, okay, yeah, you can do that. That's cool. Go after what you love, you know. But when it comes to you, I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna do that. That's too crazy for me.
Yeah. I think that does apply. I think that's really probably a good way of describing it. And I also think that, I don't know, depending on what we're talking about, like, I guess when it comes to finding solutions to my problems, like, my mom is an ENFP and she'll like give me ideas sometimes and I'll be like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. Like, it's just kind of a like a lack of openness to trying different things or to, I don't know, it's like I'm looking for something specific and if it doesn't match up exactly with kind of what I'm going for or trying to seek,
Mhm.
then I'm kind of quick to shut it down. And I've been trying to be better about that lately, like actually hearing something out, because a lot of times what happens is like I'll initially shoot something down and then later I'll be like, oh, that was actually a pretty good idea. Um, and realize that that person was right. But um, yeah, and I think I do get the like, I don't really give myself a lot of credit for the things that I do. Um, yeah, there's always that like, yes, but I'm not really, I'm not doing this or this or this.
Yes.
So,
I think it's good that you mentioned that you have an ENFP mom, because like her primary or dominant function is NE, and that's your inferior function. So
hmm.
I'm not really gonna ask if it clashes, but how has that helped you develop your NE in that sense? Like, I suppose my additional question would be, or follow up question would be, how do you think does an ISFJ develop their inferior function? Right? In a
Mm,
practical sense. Okay, now I want to become better as an ISFJ. What can I do then? At least just basing on your own experience or your understanding of the theory.
yeah. So, I would say definitely like trying new things is really big. Maybe even things that you're scared of, but that you might want to do. Like, um, when I was in high school, I decided to join the cross country team running, and I'd never been athletic. I'd never done anything like that before. But it was actually one of my teachers who was the cross country coach and asked me if I wanted to join. So I decided to be open to that possibility, and I showed up at a practice run and met some cool people and kept going, and it just became like the best experience of that 4 years that I spent in high school. So like definitely getting out of your comfort zone and trying things, even if you don't end up sticking with them, like it's fine. I think, and I just thought of this now, like I think a big anxiety for me at least is that I'm going to waste a lot of time trying a lot of things that I won't end up needing or using or sticking with. But I think the point is just to have the experience and to try a lot of different things. And sometimes, you know, you're not going to stick with a lot of things, but it's okay to just like try them. The other thing is like, this is a really specific example of like a way that my mom has helped me. Something that I noticed that she does when we go shopping together, like if we're getting groceries or looking for clothes or whatever, like she'll keep her eyes open to everything that's there. Whereas I tend to go in and I'm like, I'm looking for a specific thing. And if I don't find that thing, I leave, or I just get, you know, all the things that I'm used to getting and I leave. But when I'm with her, I notice that I end up finding a lot of new things, like at the grocery store, or I'll find, you know, a piece of clothing that I wouldn't have thought would look good on me. And I guess I've tried to like adopt this perspective when I'm going out somewhere. I try to like look at the entire spectrum of things that's available. And I think this is like, I don't know if this is like SI versus NE, but I feel like NE just looks at all of the possibilities. And I think that's something that I don't really do naturally, but I actually like, even before I knew about type, I noticed that she did this and I consciously like adopted that as a way of like just trying to experience new things or getting the best result rather than the one that I have a preconceived notion about like should happen. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's like has to do with security and being sure that it's, you know, how predictable the thing would turn out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a question that I'm interested um, to hear your take on. So, how is SI helpful to you and to people who have them? Because I have SI, ENFPs have SI, and most often this is one of the, I guess, overlooked function. Overlooked, but you know, we talk about FI a lot. We talk about NE a lot, and then we talk about the dreaded DE. So, um, what do you think is beautiful about having SI as a whole? So I think it also goes to I want to talk about this because we usually talk about the common functions that a lot of people like talking about, NI, FI, NE, and those exciting things, right? Um, but what is beautiful about SI that people should know about or should appreciate more for those who have it?
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like the aspects of SI that people often focus on are like being detail oriented and organized and being able to see all these little different things and kind of just being really, I don't know how to put it, I guess just detail oriented. And that's part of it, I think. I think it's something that kind of grows naturally out of SI. But I think, I guess what's beautiful to me about SI is like the familiarity of certain things and the meanings that they have to me. Um, I guess to give an example, I was on a trip with my family recently, and I didn't know this. So we were staying in a city that I had kind of grown up in that area, and I hadn't been back there in about 16 years. And we stayed at an Airbnb, and my sister and I went for a walk one day. And in this neighborhood, we ended up finding like we just randomly stumbled upon a church that we used to go to. And I have such vivid memories of that church. And like we were walking down the block and I saw the side of it and I was like, this looks really familiar. Like, and when I saw it, I just started crying because it was like the memory was so, it felt like I was walking into a memory, and I don't know how to explain it. And I feel like most people don't understand this when I talk about it, but it was such a profound experience, I think, because that place and that just the place had so much meaning to me. And I think it's just things like that, like things that um, give you kind of a sense of continuity, or it's hard to describe. It's actually really, really hard to describe. Um, I think SI can be drawn to like, I guess, rituals and routines and um, just things that evoke a sense of familiarity and comfort and belonging in the world. I feel like I'm speaking in really broad terms here, but uh, it's like certain places and certain people and certain things hold memories for us that are really vivid, and the impressions that we get from certain things really really stick with us, I think. So yeah, I guess that's what's beautiful to me about SI.
Actually, I remember making a chart before, like words I would describe each function or each type. And I remember picking grounding for ISFJ specifically because like what you said, with the way you described SI is somewhat similar to how I would describe FI, in a sense where it's
Mm.
a very personal experience that's kind of hard to explain to people. Like, what do you mean by walking into a memory? Right? It's I understand where you're coming from on a very tertiary SI level that I think it moved you even if it's something that's in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think on a deeper level, it grounds people on remembering and looking back, and that's what I appreciate about SI. With the way you describe it, and it's nice because you're consciously aware of what's happening. For me, it's unconscious. Like I look at like something, and I'm like, oh, I remember when I was younger. Oh, and then like it's like stumbling upon something, and then like feeling something after. But with you, it's like a full experience that moves you. So that's something that I appreciate about SI. And then also like what you said earlier, I think the ritual and routine is not necessarily a bad thing because I think that's the thing that people don't dislike in general, the idea of like repetition. But in
Mm-hmm.
actuality, for people like me who have SI, in my third slot, the way I appreciate SI is that because I suck at TE, having SI helps me become more effective and efficient. It's like I'll
Mm.
create a system that will hopefully something I find easy to replicate over and over again that will make my life a little bit easier somehow. That's something that I appreciate about routines and rituals because there's a negative connotation just of just the word alone, you know. Oh, that's so ritualistic, or like, oh, we have to do it over and over again. But really, sometimes we need that, you know. Like I feel like societies are built on something that has been repeated over and over again because you know it's proven to be true and has been tested over time and different people. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I just it's like triggered something in me that something that I think people need to learn more about SI, that beyond the rituals and routine, there's actually something good about it, you know. So
Yeah.
go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I like what you said about, societies being built on rituals and routine. It's like we build on things from the past. And that's just a really important part of like a stable society in general, I feel like. So when people talk about SI, being ritualistic or traditional, like it's a bad thing, it's like it's not. It's really important actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
I think that's one thing also that you mentioned, like one of the words attached to SI, or not sensors, but like SI users in general, SI DOMs and auxiliary in general. So there would be no present and future, I think, without the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should be more aware of what these functions mean and how it helps um, build the societies that we even have today. So that's something that I personally love about um, SI. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, my last question would be, what would be your message to ISFJs in general? So the first one is just in general, like what do you want them to learn about ISFJs? Like, hey, love you who you are or something. And the second one would be, what would you want as ISFJs to learn at this point in time, knowing that they're kind of in this journey of learning about their type or the functions, you know?
Yeah. ISFJs in general, I think, and I'm saying this to myself also, I think just have confidence in yourself and um, in your ideas, and make sure that you surround yourself with people who believe in your abilities and want to see you succeed, and know that you're capable. I think that, at least for myself, I can doubt my own abilities a lot. And one thing that has really helped me is having like really supportive people in my life um, who will just build me up and, you know, kind of give me that feedback on my ideas and my creative pursuits, and just, yeah, just having people who actually believe in me even when I don't believe in myself is really important. um, and then ISFJ is learning about type. That's an interesting one. I would say one thing that I thought was both frustrating and fun when I first started out learning about type was trying to type other people and realizing how often I got it wrong. I would say just don't be afraid to get it wrong, and know that you're going to make mistakes and that you're not going to type people correctly much of the time at first. I mean, I still don't even type everyone I meet correctly. So, yeah, just like be open to changing your mind, and um, also don't let the bad stereotypical descriptions get you down. When I first was learning about type, I ran across a lot of really bad online forums where there was just a lot of censor bashing going on. I would say ignore those spaces. Like, find somewhere that is supporting and accepting of censors. I feel like Twitter is a really good place for that, or at least it has been really good for me when I had a Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I want to add to that. I started off on Twitter, and I think what I loved about the Twitter community is that we were very close, even if we didn't talk a lot um, in person. To the point, even now, I can just ask you um, to do this with me, even if we haven't really talked much in the past. We knew that we belonged in the same circle in that time when people weren't really into type that. But I think MBTI community has grown significantly coming from the time that we began. Pretty sure you were there earlier before, like you were there before me. So that's something that I'll always, like a very, as a true SI user, something I always look back at. Because that's where I felt like I was a child that grew up in that place.
Mm-hmm.
18. That year was very important to me because I was really just myself when I started off there. And so I'll never forget the people whom um, I interacted with, or still interacted with up until this point. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I hope that all sensors would look past the bad stereotyping. That's why I'm kind of to drag more sensors into my channel, because I need more representation. Because otherwise it's always just gonna be me and other people talking about the same type, you know. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Natalie, for gracing us um, with your insights and stories about being an ISFJ. So, if there's anything else that you would like to share, or if you want other people to reach out to you, for example, some ISFJ wants to connect with you, how can they reach you if you, um, in case you're open?
Yeah, so first off, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you. You ask really great questions, and I feel like I actually learned some things talking too. Um, so I have a YouTube channel, that one ISFJ. Uh, you can message me on there. I used to have a Twitter account, that was also that same handle at that one ISFJ. I recently kind of left that account on Twitter, um, but I may make a new one at some point. Who knows? But yeah, it's just the YouTube channel for now.
Okay. So yeah, guys, if you want to reach out to her, you can. I'll link her handles on my description. And thank you so much for spending time with me. I really had fun talking with you. And yeah, maybe in the future we can talk about other things again when you're free. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you guys next time. Peace. Follow me on my socials at mbti time on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you're not sure if you're an INFP, INFJ, ENFP, INTJ, or any other type, book a typing session with me by visiting www.mbtitime.com. Links in the descriptions down below.